Thank you everyone for joining this special webinar with Lucy, my boss. And we just a bit of housekeeping first. We're going to be recording this session. So if anyone says anything during this period and they have any exception, then please let us know, because we edit these afterwards before they go live on our YouTube platform. So, so with no further ado, I will do a little introduction. So Lucy Brown is the Deputy Director of the FNF Academy, and as I said, my boss. Lucy was an aspiring nurse scholar and is very proud FNF alumni. She started her nursing career at Guy's and St Thomas's, specialising in paediatric intensive care, before moving to Australia, where she worked at the Royal Children's Hospital in Brisbane. While in post, Lucy joined the Paediatric Retrieval Service, working alongside the Royal Flying Doctors Service, and also completed her MSc, winning an award for her thesis on reducing the risks of barotrauma in the PICU patient. This also gained her a place with the Golden Key International Honour Society, where only the top 15% of global academic students are invited to join. Lucy joined Bupa on returning to the UK, working in numerous clinical leadership roles. Lucy designed and developed the Leading Clinical Excellence Programme for Bupa, receiving a global award for her work. Most recently, Lucy has been working in the Circle Health Group as a Director of Nursing, supporting the NHS resilience work on the front line, before she then joined our wonderful FNF Academy. And I will now hand over to Lucy. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody. Goodness, it sounds like I feel a bit embarrassed with my introduction. And I am very proud to work for the Florence Nightingale Foundation. It's I think I've landed my dream job. I've been in post about 6 months now. So I'm just going to share my screen and share with a bit of presentation, but I'd really love to hear your questions this morning. So put your hands up, your virtual hands or your actual hands, and Adam will field questions for me, because once I share my screen I won't be able to see you all. So please do put your hand up, ask any questions as we go through, but there is time for Q&A at the end as well. And I've got the wonderful Jess Sainsbury with me, who's going to be sharing some insights on reverse mentoring, her experiences. So Jess will be sharing some really good stories, and I'll be sharing some insights as well, and some stories of great mentoring, but giving you a bit of a background as well. Unfortunately, I won't be able to cover everything on mentorship because it's such a large topic, and obviously you can do a whole course on it, but I just wanted to pick out some highlights and give you some key takeaways today. So I will start sharing my screen. If you can let me know you can see it, Adam, that would be grand. Yeah, all okay, great, thank you. So as Adam said, I'm the Deputy Director of the Florence Nightingale Academy, and I have such a wonderful job of supporting the scholars and all the education and training that we deliver across the Academy. So I feel very proud to work with such an amazing team. So just going to move across my slide. So I had to start with a quote from Florence, and she's right behind me there holding a lamp, because I'm in the offices today. So I'm going to talk about learning culture and how important it is to create those environments across all organisations. But what I really like from Florence, she says about how very little can be done under the spirit of fear. And that really resonated with me about creating a learning culture. And we were really fortunate to have Ruth May attend our Scholar Conference back in October. And she gave a really compelling speech about how it's so important to mentor and bring on the next generation of nurses and midwives. And she talked about how we have, as nurses and midwives, have a real, sadly, a history of eating our young, which made me so sad when I heard it. And I thought actually probably was part of where I wanted to share and come and present today on mentorship, to make sure that we all have such a responsibility to support our newly qualified colleagues, but also our peers. And also as senior nurses, we can learn so much from the front line. So really trying to embody that learning culture across everything that we do. So that's what I'm going to talk a bit about today. So just moving across. So first I'm going to talk about the benefits of the learning culture. So obviously, probably goes without saying, increased productivity. If you have motivated and engaged teams, you know, there was a wonderful study by McKinsey, if you get time to read it, which talks about how staff are 50% more productive if they're motivated and engaged. That's incredible. Imagine the difference that can make to patient outcomes and population health, you know, if you're really engaged and motivated. It decreases employee turnover. You know, that we're critical at our workforce at the moment. And so sadly, nurses and midwives are leaving the profession in quite high levels. So actually, if we can really support that learning culture, that will help along those lines. And also you get that loyalty and commitment, which is so valuable. It raises the bar on creating a continuous improvement mindset. If you get the chance, watch a few podcasts from Simon Sinek. He talks quite a lot around continuous improvement mindset, that shared ownership of projects, shared accountability of results, that collaboration and collective leadership is so important. It develops leaders across all of the organisation, right from the front line, right through to senior execs. And it's really important for that succession planning and talent management. It creates a culture of inquiry and knowledge sharing. It doesn't allow people to keep hold of their nuggets of knowledge. It's sharing best practice, sharing policies and procedures, but all in all, making sure that we can have an impact on our patients and making sure we deliver the most outstanding and high quality care at all times. We have an enhanced ability, so it also promotes enhanced ability for individuals and teams to embrace change. That's something I really want you to take away today. We need to innovate at pace. We need to change our processes and our practices and be adaptable and agile. So I want you to take something away from today. The importance of mentorship in a learning culture is we really need to start moving at pace, and something that's so important. And just to plug a webinar we did last week, a couple of weeks ago, with Liam Cahill, he talked about the digital revolution, and it is so important to actually make sure we're ready for that as well and support it. We're part of it. This is ongoing. So there's a bit of an insight into a learning culture. I could talk about that all day, but it's just giving you the high level benefits of why we do it. So really, how does mentorship fit into this? So mentorship is a really critical part of a learning culture. You need to have that supportive culture. And I think it's really moving away from that eating our young culture that I talked about earlier. We really need to embody it across all levels of all of our organisations, and that cross-pollination of ideas and best practice. So I think there's always been a bit of a misunderstanding and misconception on what the difference is between mentoring and coaching. So I thought as a little introduction, I would share kind of just a very basic kind of table of what the differences are. And it's not kind of absolute, but it's just something as a guide, really. So coaching is a set duration. It's usually for a finite time. Mentoring is usually an ongoing, growing that lovely relationship, that connection and that bond between you and that trust and rapport. Coaching is usually around a task, whereas mentoring, as I said, is a relationship. Coaching short-term, long-term, kind of focused on that. Coaching is more of a formal relationship, kind of goal-setting, results-orientated, whereas mentoring is kind of that informal relationship, which is just so valuable, that trusted relationship. You can go and be vulnerable and share how you're feeling openly and really develop and grow. And again, that goes there, development and performance. It gives support and guidance when you're a mentor. On coaching, you tend to focus on specific development areas, whereas mentoring, you focus on that professional and also that whole holistic approach, that personal success as well. So looking at your behaviours, your confidence. Coaching focuses on instructing, and then mentoring is about listening. That's such a key skill of mentorship, is listening. And I really like this last bit, that transformation piece is about that personal and professional transformation, which is just essential, isn't it? And I think just on that note, just sharing my own journey, I was, as Adam said earlier with my bio, I'm a very proud FNF alumni. I was a scholar back about 5 years ago. And through the FNF scholarship, it was transformational for me. And I think that was through having a great mentor and being supported kind of within the organisation I worked in, but also through the foundation as well, was just critical for my growth and development and my transformation. So anyway, benefits of mentoring. This is going to be a bit of a revision for most of you, I imagine, but I think it's important to talk about. So increased self-confidence and self-awareness. You're empowering individuals to go forward and share their ideas and best practice and lead change. So obviously you get the leadership skills development as well. You develop better communication skills. You can be more adaptable in your style, speak to different levels, tackle barriers and difficulties in communicating as well. It's really beneficial. You get the art of delivering feedback, really honest and open feedback, and you can ask good questions too. Listening, key, as I said earlier, absolutely important and essential component of being a good mentor. And what I really love, and I think this is another key takeaway I want you to take today, and I'll keep saying this through the webinar, is it's exposure to new and different perspectives, which is absolutely integral to our progression within the nursing field as well. We have to understand the population that we serve, and within that we have to understand the diversity of our workforce, and from that you get that exposure. You grow a really great personal network as well, so networking is key to sharing ideas and best practice, and you have an increased chance of promotion and job satisfaction as well, and I'll go through some benefits on that in a moment. And what's really nice, and I think this kind of sits with us as individuals, as nursing and midwives, is paying it forward, isn't it? It's that kindness, it's that making sure and looking back over your shoulder and bringing people with you. If you've been successful in your career, it's really important that you bring people alongside. That's succession planning in one way, but also sharing that expert knowledge. And very much like Florence behind me with the lamp, you know, she's sharing that knowledge. That lamp is a visual when we do a Westminster Abbey service, that we share that knowledge to the next generation of nurses and midwives, which I just love. It gives me goosebumps when I think about that. And again, just learning from someone from a different background, which I kind of covered a little, but we'll talk a bit more about reverse mentoring in a moment too. We're up to. Great stuff. So benefits of mentoring, quite like this is more from a business sector, but I thought it was quite interesting for you senior nurses on the call to kind of think about the benefits for your organisation and how important it is to have this established. If you haven't so already so in your organisation, obviously making sure you make time. I know we've all been busy. I know it's been a really demanding time, but the benefits of mentorship and supporting the workforce is probably more critical than ever now. So from an organisation perspective, if you need some kind of reiteration of why it's so important, you get greater job satisfaction. And I talked about it earlier, 91% of workers, that's an astonishing level, are more satisfied within their jobs, a happy workforce stay, they're loyal, they'll bring great ideas, they'll be more productive, more open to change. You know, you'll only reap the benefits. You'll build a great network to get in jobs, you'll get that progression in your organisation, you'll have a wonderful pipeline of talent and succession planning. People will go on for the mentees, it's fantastic. You'll get progression in your career, but you get a better salary, better prospects, which isn't always as important to us as nurses, but something to consider. And what I love, this is probably my favourite, is become more empowered and confident. 87, another high number there of mentors and mentees, felt empowered by the experience and have a greater confidence to lead, to bring about change and innovate, which is just critical, isn't it, to any organisation to move forward. So just wanted to share these little insights there with you. Great stuff. So types of mentoring. So before I go into this, I wanted to share a little story, and I know Jo's on the call, Jo McCormack, so I might ask her to chip in if that's okay, and share her insights. But we had a wonderful debrief session. I do love, we have the Nightingale Frontline, our facilitators we have every couple of weeks, we have a debrief session to talk through the themes that are coming through our co-consulting sessions for our members and for alumni who have access to that service. And Pippa Goff, one of our facilitators, shared a really poignant story with us all that kind of opened our eyes and made us think about our approach, really, and it just kind of emphasised the importance of mentoring and supporting. And I wanted to share that with you today. Pippa gave me permission, but obviously it's anonymous. So we run these sessions, and it's obviously confidential, our sessions, but we have newly qualified sessions. We have different themes for the Nightingale Frontline, and a newly qualified nurse came to one of the sessions and shared, and she was very traumatised. She was quite tearful and quite upset. And essentially, I've just been mistakenly muted, I think. I'll just unmute myself then. So I'll go back to the point I was saying. So Jess, I might say, where did I get to in the story? I wouldn't want anyone to
got to, she was saying that, and then
oh great. So she was quite traumatized, she was quite upset, she was really fearful. She had no mentor. She said she didn't have any support within her organization. And God, it was just sad. It was sad. She looked so fearful. And what was quite upsetting is that she had witnessed some patient care that she wasn't happy about. She didn't think that it was the best outcome or the clinical decision making for the patient. And actually it should have gone down the palliation route rather than escalating treatment. She said she could see the fear in the patient's eyes. But what is absolute travesty is she didn't feel confident or brave enough to share and challenge the medical decisions or even escalate to a senior nurse on shift, which for me feels like we failed her. And that's, I guess I wanted to share that with you is, put your arms around our newly qualified nurses, put your arms around, and if you are a newly qualified nurse, share your experience, be bold, be brave, speak up. People are there to listen. It's our absolute obligation to look after one another, particularly through these really, really challenging times. And I know we're busy, but it is so, so critical. But thank you to Pippa for allowing me to share that. And I didn't know, Jo, is there anything you wanted to share, some insights, because you were part of that conversation as well this week?
Yeah, it was. Thank you, Lucy. And that was a very powerful example that you gave. And I think it tapped into a number of other areas that we've touched on before. And I know that you've recently done another podcast on that, and that's vulnerability, imposter syndrome, and psychological safety. So I think those are all linked into creating the conditions to be your best, and what you can get in terms of benefits from having a good mentor who role models that sort of behaviour.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jo. Thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy our sessions, so thank you. Thanks. Great stuff. And our Nightingale Frontline programme, obviously, they're open to all our members. So if you do feel you want to come and co-consult, please do log in. We can share those details at the end of the webinar as well. So anyway, back to mentorship. So there's lots of different types of mentorship, and we're going to go through a few of these in a bit more detail through the webinar this morning. So one-to-one mentoring, that's your traditional mentoring that we're exploring. Group mentoring is a bit of a new, been around the last few years, whereas if you've got a time critical and you need to be efficient in your approach, you can actually have a group, a bit like peer mentoring as well, so they kind of go hand in hand, but you may have a lead. It's different to co-consulting. Co-consulting is where the facilitator will lead the individual as part of a group to the issue and the resolution of the issue, whereas group mentoring is where you give that direct steer and guidance. And it can be really, really valuable, And if you are struggling with kind of building a relationship one-to-one, you feel a bit daunted about building a relationship like that, then actually group mentoring might be for you. Maybe something you want to introduce in your organisations as well. Peer mentoring is exactly what it says. It's where you support one another peer-to-peer. I think we do this as nurses all the time, don't we? You have a clinical buddy that you bring after a shift. You say, God, I had a bad day. I need to talk through the elements of my shift today. And I think we do that, but you can do it in a more formal setting as well. But I'm a huge advocate for mentoring in any way. Distance or re-mentoring, well, this is kind of what it says. With COVID, one of the silver linings of COVID is actually it's opened up through the internet and through virtual, is that we can actually connect with people we wouldn't ordinarily do. So you can actually kind of connect with people overseas, you can share experiences, you can connect with different organisations. So it's great. And then I'll come to a question in a minute. I think it's Gibbs, I think I've said your name correctly, just one moment. Is reverse mentoring, which we're going to explore in a bit more detail, and Jess is going to share her insights, which I'm really excited to hear about. And then speed mentoring, which is a new thing for me, which I've only just learned as well. Speed mentoring, you can actually come about and talk about a topic very quickly and come to a resolution if you need guidance and support from someone more senior as well. So I'm just going to go to, I'm sorry, I can't see, is it Gibbs Practice Nurse? I think you've got a question. If you did mean to raise your hand, if not, don't worry, or we can come to you at the end. Okay.
Sorry, I think that was my mistake. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
That's okay, no problem at all. I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you, so not to worry, not to worry at all. So on the topic of reverse mentoring, we're going to go across to reverse mentoring now. And we go across. Let's see. There we are, brilliant. So reverse mentoring. I'm going to give a bit of an overview, and then I'm going to pass across to my lovely colleague Jess, who will share her insights. So reverse mentoring can sometimes be known as reciprocal mentoring, but for the purpose of today, we're going to stick with the term reverse mentoring because it can have different connotations, and that's what I'm going to go through now. So reverse mentoring enables people in senior positions to learn and understand issues and perspectives from the front line for more junior staff. And it really does help you, but it's not just less junior staff. It might be underrepresented groups. It gives you an insight into your workforce. So it may well be insights into people from different backgrounds, from different ethnic minorities, from socioeconomic backgrounds. It just gives you a real insight into their own experiences of how they experience being at work, but actually more broadly. And what's really, really important is it will be representative of the population that you serve as well. So it's critical as senior nurses that you link in with your workforce. I've been a director of nursing within a primary care setting and more recently in a hospital setting, acute surgical hospital. And what I learned through those experiences, it was so valuable. Yeah, it took time, but actually I invested that time early on, and I always had an open door policy, and actually it allowed me and enabled me to learn about my workforce, about my patients more quickly, more rapidly and efficiently than I could have done. And I think it's so essential that we have that open door policy. Now, in reverse of that, for you guys that are perhaps newly qualified or in more junior positions, go and be bold. That's a really key takeaway I want you to take today. Go and be bold. Go and knock on that door. Go and ask for some time with your chief nurse or your director of nursing, because, well, from my perspective, I would never say no. I always had my door open for people to share their experiences and their insights, because it was just so valuable and helped inform decision making and resource allocation and all of the above. You just reap the benefits essentially. So just something, a little story I wanted to share while I'm on that topic is around when I did start my scholarship. And I talk about in a podcast I recorded about my imposter syndrome, but I won't go into that today. But I went for my assessment for my scholarship, and I remember sitting there thinking, goodness me, she said, right, I'm going to task you with going and spending some time with your chief exec. Chief exec, I can't go and do that. He said, he's a terribly busy man. He doesn't want to hear from Lucy Brown. So she said, no, that's one of your tasks, your goals, your objectives. You've got to do that by the time we come back together. Goodness me, and I felt the sick in my stomach, felt a bit nervous. And I thought, no, she's asked me to do it. She's asked me to go and do it. It's one of my objectives. I'm going to go and do it. Well, lo and behold, he did make time for me, and I went and spent half an hour with him, and I shared my values and my views and my insights, and I shared my quality improvement project. And he was so accommodating. He listened. The meeting actually overran, a very busy man, and he gave me more of his time, which I was very grateful for. And it was fantastic, and that almost gave me more confidence, and that self-confidence we're talking about, to then go and lead and challenge. So then I was more confident in meetings to speak up. I was more confident to share my experiences and values. So to anyone out there, I hope that inspires you to go and do the same. And we're giving you permission. Go and knock on that door. Go and share your insights and speak up. So great. So next up, so I kind of covered some of those areas there. Less senior people exposed to new ideas. So what's really nice about reverse mentoring, and I love this word, symbiosis, that means you learn from each other and you both gain from that mutual relationship. So less senior people are exposed to new ideas, experiences and networking, and you get to go along to meetings and give your insight and from your view, because obviously senior people going to those meetings all the time, and they miss certain elements. So it's really great. It allows senior leaders to get feedback in a constructive manner. And what's really nice is if you've got senior leaders at the top and there's quite a bit of hierarchy in the middle, there's no concern about kind of any blame or sharing or anything like that. You can actually share quite honestly and openly your insights. It's just such a positive thing to do. Provides insights into the difficulties and barriers are faced, as we talked about. So you're only going to reap the benefits. And what I love more than anything is about this inclusive and appreciative understanding of the diversity of the workforce. That's critical. We have to all have an understanding, that inclusivity, supporting each other and understanding each other's perspectives. So that's kind of reverse mentoring, a whistle-stop tour. Again, we could talk about it in a lot of depth. We'll probably do our webinar on it, to be fair. But I'm going to hand across to Jess now, who has done some incredible work in the student area, but also, I believe, was a reverse mentor with the chief nurse at her trust as well. So I'm going to hand across to Jess for a few moments. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Lucy. So before I get going, I know you've already touched on this, Lucy, but I think it's important to point out that mentorship can take many different forms depending on the individual and many other factors. But what's important is kind of finding something that works for them at that moment in time, and it's okay to chop and change. And I thought, before I talk to you about reverse mentoring, I'd share briefly my experiences as a student nurse, as it sets the scene very well for what happened with the reverse mentoring. So during my time as a student nurse, during the programme, the people who I had good mentoring relationships were those who kind of got to know me as a person, both in practice and at university. And it made a huge difference to my time as a student. I wasn't just a number, especially when the cohorts were quite big at the time when I went through my nurse education. And it could have been things like scheduling in inductions, having those initial, midpoint and final interviews. All of these things to you guys will probably sound like basics, but it doesn't happen all the time. Things like offering clinical supervision on placement and treating me as the same as other staff in that respect. But also from a university perspective, having those regular check-ins in person from university staff, usually around the halfway point of a placement, but also just being on the end of an email. So you weren't just kind of thrown out into practice and you weren't the university's problem for, weeks or months, however long your placement was. But it's important to note as well that it wasn't always just the nice fluffy stuff, but it was about being that critical friend and support as well. I found super helpful. So for example, I remember my personal academic tutor, he questioned whether I was taking on too much. I was always putting my hands up for all of these extracurricular things. And he was, really helpful in helping me find out what was the most important to me. He wasn't saying stop everything, but he was helping me to kind of prioritize. And I really needed that at that point in time. But on top of, that mentoring, those coaching conversations, I think, are super helpful. So you might not have the time to have a longer term relationship with someone in that mentorship aspect, but coaching conversations out in practice, and also via the trade union I'm a member of as well, those staff are also super helpful. And I can't possibly not mention the peer support and that peer mentoring. I know, Lucy, you touched on that as well. It played a huge role during my nurse education. And that wasn't just those who I was at university with. So online peer support networks. I'm going to do a couple of cheeky plugs, Lucy. So like the Student Nurse Project, We Student Nurses, the trade unions have their own ones as well. And the RCN also has their newly registered nurses network. So that kind of knowing that you're not on your own was really, really beneficial. So reverse mentoring. This was a more formal form of support I received during my final year as a student nurse. And it also went over into the first 6 or so months as a new registrant as well. And I did it with the chief nurse at my trust, which was, oh my goodness, why would she want to talk to me? But she was absolutely amazing, down to earth. We started off with kind of, that initial meeting was more like, what are your key interests from both sides from both of us, and what are our potential talking points as we go on. But they weren't set in stone. It was just to help us kind of get going. And what we did do is we set each other we set each other homework between sessions. It was a bit of a running joke that I was setting the chief nurse some homework, but the beauty of that was it kept us kind of accountable to those sessions, and we wouldn't just rock up, and we were always developing and growing together, which was super important. We had a mix of in-person and virtual. Obviously, as COVID hit, it had to go over to virtual, which was absolutely fine. But those face-to-face sessions are beneficial too, because I could have a reverse mentoring session with her, and we'd normally tally it up with, a quite senior meeting that I could then go and observe and see what it was like, which was really insightful. But as a result of that relationship, I felt heard, I felt valued, and not only that my opinion mattered, but those of my peers as well, because she told me before each session, Jess, I want you to speak to others, because she wants to know what's happening for those joining the trust. And as a result of engaging with it, I really believe that it's led me to the role that I'm in today. I'm on secondment to the Florence Nightingale Foundation, and the chief nurse of my trust was really supportive of me doing it, despite the fact that I was really newly registered, newly qualified, but she could see how I could bring back learning to the trust and how I could make an impact in that way, and how it would develop me as an individual too. So it was good having, someone like that on your side. And I know this doesn't happen all the time, but this is like my experience of reverse mentoring, is that I truly believe that I've made a friend as well, because we did it for quite a long period of time. And we're not doing it anymore because, we needed to free up some space for someone else, another student, to come in and do it. And chief nurse is very, very busy person. But what I'm now doing is through one of my work streams at Florence Nightingale Foundation, starting from hopefully next month, we will be encouraging student nurses, midwives and AHPs who are on our student councils programme. We're going to match them up with registrants and get them to start engaging in reverse mentoring. So it's that kind of paying it forward piece as well. So I could go on for ages, but I'm going to stop there, Lucy, if that's okay.
They're so valuable, and we are so fortunate to have you at the foundation and to be championing the work. So thanks for sharing, Jess. And I'd love just, I guess, the big thing I heard then is you felt heard and valued. I think that's a key point, a key takeaway for everyone today. Let your workforce be heard and valued. It's so critical. Thank you. So I'm just going to share just from a perspective, and I took these some colleagues at Elevate. I hope they don't mind. I like the picture, the iceberg of ignorance. Let's avoid the iceberg of ignorance, I think. So problems known to executives, if you are in a senior position, you know about 4% of the things that are going on in your organisation. Team managers, a little bit more, about 9%, which I thought was quite shocking. And then team leaders, a little bit more, which is good, 74%. But actually the front line, look at the value of that reverse mentoring, 100%. That will open up the lines of communication. It will help you make better decisions. And also look at that, look, Jess's insights there, feeling heard and valued. That's critical. Looking after your workforce is absolutely critical. So just like to share that little bit with you there. So I wanted to touch on, and this is quite a new kind of, well, not a new concept, it's been around for a while, but I just wanted to touch on it. And I'm going to give a bit of a plug to our Gemma Stacey, Professor Gemma Stacey is my line manager, and she's writing a book at the moment about wellbeing in nurses. And Sue Haynes has written a chapter on legacy mentoring. So when you get a chance, perhaps I think it'd be very useful for you to read. But there is so much wisdom and experience in late career, so that nurses that are later in their career. It's not exclusively defined as those in their 50s and 60s, but it's those who are winding down, who might be looking towards retirement and going part-time, but still have so much knowledge and expertise to share. So I think it's something that I would urge and encourage everybody across all organisations to introduce, that importance of diverse thinking as well. You think about that some of these nurses have been nursing for 30, 40 years, that critical skills that they can share around navigating that political landscape and those key skills about, bringing about change positively. It's only a good thing. And I think we shouldn't write off our late career nurses, which sometimes happens, which makes me quite sad. So actually perhaps take it back to your organisations and ask for this to happen, and look out for the book as well. There's a whole chapter on it to inspire you too. But it's actually about value and retaining those late career nurses. As I said earlier, nurses and midwives are leaving the profession in quite high volumes and are actually leaving a really big gap in clinical leadership. We've talked about the clinical leadership crisis probably for the last 10 years. Now we're seeing it, it's evident. So actually let's share that wisdom and expertise. And what I'm really proud of is our Nightingale frontline facilitators. Some of them are later in their careers and they're giving back, they're paying it forward, sharing their expertise and facilitating sessions, which is just so heartwarming to see. And I'm always in awe of all their experience. I learn so much from them, so it's good for me too. So I just thought I'd share that, and just something food for thought you think about to take back and question in your organisations too. The power of wisdom, hey? So just a quick kind of wanted to touch on it. And Jess, well done, because you've kind of covered some of these off already in your in your insights. I'd like this article in the Harvard Business Review, and I've put some links at the end of today so you can read it in your own time. So what do the best mentors do? I love the little tortoise as well, just made me smile when I saw that picture, so I thought I'd share it with you. So put the relationship before the mentorship. So Jess spoke about this earlier. That chemistry and connection is pretty vital, and that friendship is almost a critical friend, as you said, and it's about that genuine relationship where you can be vulnerable. So you think about the work of Brené Brown, it's so important to show your vulnerability so you can grow and develop as a human being, as a leader, as a person, as a nurse, as a midwife. And it's just about that relationship. So if you are a mentor, just think about that. It's critical you get that base kind of understanding, trust and rapport quickly. It's integral. And something we're good at as nurses and midwives. We have to build trust and rapport with our patients quickly. We've got that skill set in us. So we do make good mentors. Focus on the character rather than the competency. I quite like this. Obviously, competency is important. Yes, it is. But actually focus on getting them to have better confidence and self-awareness, open their eyes to that and help them grow, because that's where you'll really reap the benefits of mentorship. Obviously, competency is important, but a good mentor will go beyond that and look at the characteristics and behaviours you need to develop even further. Optimism. I'm a bit of a boundless optimist myself, but I love this as well. It's about giving energy, not taking energy away from the individual. So they come with an idea and it might be a little bit extreme or might not be with your thinking. Go with it, explore it, allow your mentee to be creative and explore ideas and new ideas and give them that safe space to talk it through. So important, and that they'll grow and flourish as a result. And try and leave that cynicism at home if you can. be loyal to your mentee. So I think this is something, particularly within organisations, we might worry that if we grow and develop someone so much, they may leave. But what if they leave and they go and get new experiences and exposure to new environments, and then they come back? You know, if you love them, let them go. I really like that phrase, and something I've used throughout my career when I've been mentoring people is, you know, support their dreams and aspirations, support them to get there, support them to grow and develop, because you'll only reap the benefits, you know, across all nursing and midwifery. So and our patients will ultimately benefit from it all. So there you go, and it's in encouraging them to thrive and grow. So there you go, something I love. So I love these. So I don't know if any of you, I follow Kenny Gibson on LinkedIn, and he shares these wonderful, they're from NHS Horizons, on all sorts of topics, but I really like this, and I thought it'd be good for you as a takeaway. Quick one, just some quick top tips on how to establish mentoring. And we've covered quite a lot of this off already, but just on a one pager, just nice for you to see. So before you start, you're going to agree some terms. You're going to agree on how you'll meet face to face, etc. Clarify some baseline expectations. If you're interested, there's a really good article, again, in the Harvard Business Review, on what does efficient mentorship look like, and a lot of this is covered in that as well. But it's about agreeing those common themes. What do you want to work towards? Agree ways of working, so that connectivity and chemistry talked about. Make sure you build that rapport really quickly. How long do you want to, you know, how often do you want to meet? You know, let that set between you. It might be quite a bit early on, it might be more sporadic later on, but try and meet regularly at regular intervals. Have a timetable of what you want to achieve. You know, like Jess said, it's about setting each other homework. I really like that. So set each other homework, go away, learn, bring back your thoughts and ideas and discuss them at your mentorship session. You should plan and prepare for them, because it's really great time and you want to utilise it as effectively and efficiently as possible. Mentorship is a supportive form of development. So key themes that you'll see as mentors, generally, this isn't exhaustive, there's obviously so many areas you can grow, is career development and growth, looking at key behaviours. Conflict resolution is quite a common theme that you'll see, and something you need to be able to deal with as leaders. Time management, you know, I think Jess said that about willing to say no, learning to prioritise your work is such a key skill. Networking, you know, the power of the network, you know, we see that at the Florence, you know, with the alumni and our membership, the power of the network, sharing best practice, sharing key skills, expertise, experiences is just so essential. And then confidence and that permission piece that I spoke about earlier, having that permission to go and speak to someone more senior, allowing them, giving them that space and confidence to go forward and do it. So key skills, and look at this list. This is nurses and midwives all over, isn't it? A mentor should be compassionate, inquisitive, positive, authentic, approachable, encouraging and kind. That's all within our skill sets as nurses. So we all could be very, very good mentors and support one another, but support the next generation of nurses, newly qualified nurses, student nurses, and even our senior nurses. We've spoken about that, haven't we? That symbiosis. Key skill as well, listening, I think I've spoken about already, and sharing knowledge, expertise, experience, resources, wisdom, networks, you know, it's on and on. So there's some top tips for you, but perhaps you want to pop that in, share it in your rooms at work, put it on the notice board at your hospitals and organisations, and just encourage people to go forward. So bit of a plug, I hope you don't mind. We obviously, many of you are alumni and members. We just this week, very excitingly, sent out all the successful scholar letters for 22-23. So well done to those of you. And as Greta said within the interview process, at first you don't succeed, try and try again. So important, don't give up. But actually our next cohort we're welcoming. And obviously we have a really wonderful network of mentors. But if you'd like to join and be part of supporting the next generation of scholars, please do. What I think is really critical is that you can steer and advise scholars on their innovative projects. You can be part of that change, support them in their quality improvement initiatives, and it's an opportunity for you to pay it forward. I know as alumni, I do mentor. Before I started this role, I'm a mentor within the network, and it's so valuable to pay it forward, isn't it? Share your skills. So very, very modern for me. I'm getting up to date. We've got a QR code, so if you scan that, you can log your details in with us and join our mentor network. And we'd love to welcome you to the mentor network. So please do get in touch. So finally, just aware of time, so we've got time for questions. Key takeaways that I've been kind of talking about as we go through. It's really vital you encourage a learning culture and that continuous improvement mindset across all levels of the organisation. You will only reap the benefits, as we've discussed in a bit more detail. grow and develop the next generation of change agents and innovators. You know, we want that agility to allow people to bring about new ideas, bring about change. As I said earlier, we're part of this digital, we're now in the digital revolution. It's not that we have an optional, we are part of it, and we have to be part of that change moving forward. So embrace it and go for it. Share your collective experience, wisdom and expertise. You know, we have all have an obligation to do that. You know, we're nurses. And more junior leaders, just to say again, be bold, go and knock on that door, share your experiences and perspectives. And it's so, so valuable. And I guess last but not least, pay it forward. So, so critical. And I'll leave you with another Florence quote, because I do love Florence, obviously. Let us consider ourselves, don't ever let us consider ourselves finished nurses. We must be learning for all of our lives. So all of us will benefit from mentorship and support. So let me leave that with you today. References and further reading, which is kind of really, really interesting if you wanted more knowledge and a bit more background on what I've discussed today. And then over to you guys for some questions. I hope you found that helpful.
Thank you, Lucy, for that. So I've just been looking at the chat box. There's been some very interesting conversations, but there's a specific question, if you wouldn't mind answering.
Yeah, of course.
This is from Jane Ray. Is there a role for PNA in mentoring and supporting students and newly registered nurses? In
PNA, sorry, I'm gonna see that, show my vulnerabilities. Can you give me the acronym PNA? And nurse associates, is that? Oh, can you unmute yourself, Jane? I can see you. I can see you talking.
Professional nurse advocate.
Oh no, professional advocate. Oh, sorry, I don't know. No.
Using an abbreviation.
No, it's fine. And I'm being honest and showing my vulnerabilities. I didn't know what it stood for. It's always good to ask questions, isn't it? And say you don't know. Yes, I think there is. Interestingly, yeah, the PNA, there's a lot of work going on clinical supervision as well as Emma Wadey, one of our scholars, has done amazing work in introducing clinical supervision across the country. I think it's all in place, and Jess is nodding. I know she's been involved in some of that project work. I was really lucky. I think it was the first clinical supervision working group I attended that Jess chairs, and Emma came to share her great work. So I might lean on Jess a bit to share a bit more insight, but yes, God, Jane, it's totally valuable, and clinical supervision should be across the board, right from students right through. We should all be supporting. It's not optional, it's mandatory, I think is the key kind of takeaway there. We all should be doing it. I'm a huge advocate. And I guess what I find really frustrating is other professionals. So I know I managed AHPs in previous roles, and psychologists, it's mandatory. They always have their time and space to have their clinical supervision. Why do we not make this for us as nurses and midwives? We're just as valuable. Why do we not make this time? So it's really, really critical. So yeah, totally agree, Jane. Yes, it is really, really important. And I might just pass to Jess to see if there's anything she wanted to add.
Might do a cheeky plug of our SEG. So at FNF, we've got a clinical supervision subject expert group. Clinical supervision is one of our policy priorities at the foundation. So we've got 4-nation representation. We've got a great mix of people from different backgrounds, different organisations, but also we've now got some students and newly registered nurses getting involved as well. So we're kind of tackling it from both ends. So Emma, as Lucy has said, is a member of that subject expert group, and regularly blows our mind with the numbers that are going through the courses now. And I really do agree, Jane, it's an excellent opportunity to kind of harness that and give that support for students and new registrants as well as everyone else as well. When I talk, I do tend to wave the flag for students and early career nurses, but I think it's just as important for everyone. At our FNF World Cafe event last summer, we did hear from many senior nurses as well who said, I'd like to champion clinical supervision, but I don't necessarily receive it or understand it as well as I could do myself. So, I think it is a profession-wide thing rather than just those who are just starting. But I could get on my soapbox for much longer, but I will stop and see what other questions we have, Adam.
Thinking with Jess if you want more info. Sorry, Adam. Sorry, go for it.
We've got Michael Collins, who I believe did our own webinar a few months ago.
He did.
His is more of a statement than a question, but I think it's still very interesting. Excuse my pronunciation. Michel Foucault, French philosopher, insists that power is everywhere, not because it comes from everywhere, but because it's found in everything. How can coaching and mentorship support students as they become nurses, changing their professional identity to understand the power they hold, especially as change agents?
Like that. Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much. I can't see you on the chat, but thanks for sharing, Mike. And Mike did share a really interesting webinar on professional identity, didn't he? So that's on our YouTube channel if you want to go and have a watch of that a bit later. But yeah, absolutely. Change agents and innovators. We've all got to be change agents. Haven't we? Oh, there's Mike. I can see him now. Mike, is there anything you wanted to add to that? Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Lucy. No, it was actually a question. It was literally how can coaching and mentorship support our students as they become nurses to understand the power they hold?
Good question. I think, okay, from my perspective, and happy to, from my perspective, I think it's about empowering them. So allowing them that reverse mentorship piece and getting them involved in projects. So you have that collaborative approach. So inviting them to be part of specialist working groups, inviting them to make sure you've got a cross section of a workforce. And then, you know, once you start inviting a few, it will spread. It'll be that lovely ripple effect that you see, that when you get one or two people that are real change agents and innovators and championing it, you'll find the whole workforce, well, most of the workforce, not all, most will follow too. So yeah, but empowering them, giving that permission piece, I think is critical. Thanks, Mike. I might do a little plug actually, Mike, if you don't mind. Can I embarrass you? Would that be okay? Mike, in fact, Mike is a previous scholar and is amazingly going to be riding from Land's End to John O'Groats in August to raise money for a scholarship from a nurse or midwife from a lower socioeconomic background. So absolutely fantastic. We're really proud that you'll be doing that for the foundation, and I hope to be there to support you on some of the way, Mike, anyway. So well done, amazing. I don't think I could do it, that's for sure. Anyway, it's slightly off topic, but next question, Adam, if that's okay.
We don't have any more on here. Can open it up. Does anyone have any questions?
Sorry, Lucy.
Oh, hi, Joe.
Hi there. Yeah, I had one. What should I be if I can have a say in a mentor, what should I be looking for? What qualities would I want in them?
Good question. It's normally, so when I've sought out a mentor, it's usually someone I really admire. So you might see that they've landed some really good projects. You know, you might see someone who chairs a meeting beautifully and think, well, I want to be like that. I want to be empowered. Someone who inspires you, I think, is critical, and someone who you can spend time with. You feel that there's probably, you could build a relationship and rapport with, because that connectivity in chemistry is pretty critical. So that would be my advice. Definitely. And there may be a key skill that you want to learn that a mentor could bring. So it could be presenting, it could be, you know, but generally someone who inspires you and that you can trust and build a relationship with, I think is the most critical part of mentorship.
Yeah, and I get, are there relationships that kind of last for a period of time and then come to a natural conclusion, or I guess sometimes they can carry on?
Yeah, I think I had a mentor through my scholarship, and I still meet with him regularly actually. And I probably say back to Jess's point earlier about a friend, he is probably my critical friend, and he supports me kind of through, it's a real holistic approach now. So we don't really have that formal meetup, but it is about an ongoing relationship. Sometimes it can be shorter, time frames, but I think I've had my mentor now for about 5-6 years. So it can be a long-term relationship too.
Cool, thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for your question, Joe. Great.
Anybody else?
Oh, I think Jason and Bev have just popped their hands up.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Great session, really interesting. And just listening for me, one of my things was like, and from experience and everything, both as mentoring people and having mentors and all of that, is actually it doesn't have to be a nurse. And some of the best mentors I've had have not been nurses, because they come with a different skill set, different approach, and it's that value around it. And, you know, I left the NHS a number of years ago, and, you know, I think one of the things what I struggle with is getting the message across to people is whatever care setting you work in, a mentor is valuable. He seems to be NHS associated, possibly academia, and getting that message across to people is, look, wherever you work, you know, have a mentor. Think about getting a mentor. If you work in the NHS, think of a nurse or somebody outside the NHS, and vice versa. And I suppose one of the questions is something I advocate, and, you know, and having Jess on the call is brilliant, because you can see the energy and vibes coming through there, and the understanding around all the mentoring and reverse mentoring. And for me, it's like, how do we influence people in all care settings about the value of mentorship. Sometimes it just feels like I'm banging my head against the wall, and it's like, how can, is there any we haven't, it's not a quick solution, but is anybody ideas, suggestions about how we can move this forward so that it's embraced by everybody regardless of care setting?
I think a really good place. Bit of echo. I think we might speak. A really good place to start. I think it's well documented. Is to change your culture, you need the leader on side. So you need probably go to your most senior nurse within the organisation to set that culture, that learning culture, that mentorship, and they role model effectively. And you see that wonderful ripple effect. But we can all champion it. Go back to your respective organisations, role model effectively. Ask if you're not doing mentorship, why on earth are you not doing it? Where are we setting the culture here? And you can all be part of that change. But I think, if it's not happening in your organisation, go and be bold and knock on the chief nurse's door. I really, Jason, I don't know if we obviously maybe need to connect out of it, but I'm a massive fan of actually, I've had out of sector mentors in the past and coaches who bring such value and insights. And it's quite controversial. It might be within the corporate setting or marketing or sales, things like that, but established businessmen and women can mentor you and bring great skills as well. So, and something that we're going to be looking at as well as how we can empower our nurse leaders and nurse midwifery leaders. So Jason, I'm really on board with that. Out of sector mentors are critical too. But I guess, well, to summarise, your question is the leader needs to set the culture and be part of that change as well.
Next, we have Jo McCormick with a question.
Hi, Jo.
Hi again, Lucy.
Yeah.
I suppose building on from what you've just said there about the leaders setting the culture, one interesting fact would be, are mentors allocated to people, or do they have a choice in who their mentor is? And that might be an area to explore.
I think that's a really good, because it is very difficult to pair a match. I think sometimes it's valuable for you to seek out a mentor, someone you admire, but actually if there's a key skill that you want to develop, you can have a mentorship bank. So for, I guess, from example from the scholarships, we kind of look at the key skills, the background of the nurse or midwife that's been successful, and then what their quality improvement project is and how you can support them through that, establishing and embedding their quality improvement project or that change initiative as well. So that's how we pair. But it can be in any way. It might be someone you admire, like I said, or it might be that there's a key skill that you want to develop, and then you can pair in that way as well. There is a bit of science to it, but it's an art as well. I think it's probably the best way to describe it, Jo. What about from your experiences? Because you're a very experienced nurse leader. What about from your experience?
Yeah, so I think for junior staff, and we were getting some discussion from junior staff, often it's allocated. So you're allocated a mentor, and sometimes those relationships don't have the chemistry there, and it's about how you manage those relationships. And then as senior leaders, yes, there's an opportunity to have more than one mentor, depending on what it is you're looking at and what skills you want to develop. So I think there's a sort of a difference between junior staff and maybe senior staff.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you. Great to get your insights as well.
I think we've got time for one more. Annie Jones.
Hiya.
Hi, Annie.
I'm coming to the end of my career in the next 2 years, and trying to get everything ready and set within sort of the team and the service, and looking at different things to do, and it's so challenging. And one of the real difficult things and challenges has been around getting the managers to understand that there is a need for staff to have some time, for the nurses to have some time, not just for their clinical supervision, but if they want to take mentorship elsewhere, while we're actively promoting people undertaking bids, people doing new projects, research, leadership, everything. It's really important to go outside of what's there in the close pool, isn't it, and go further. And I find, as you know, there's a time where sort of some of the direct managers really struggle with that, and so I'm hoping that someone, you know, amongst it will pick up some stuff about how that's valuable and needed, and sort of trying to get that in, really, because I think until that time comes, there's a real challenge to providing the time to free people up, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's tricky in the current climate. I guess it feels like we're emerging from the challenges, but you do need to make time. You do make time, because you'll only reap the benefits. And okay, it may feel like a task and a chore, but actually long term you'll be more productive. You know, that's really empowering, and letting the nurse leaders see the value in it. Inez Midwifery leaders seeing the value in it, so they can make that time and space, because they'll only reap the benefits in if you've got engaged and happy workforce, they're going to be more productive, they're not going to leave organisations or leave the profession. So it's just about flying that flag, Annie. I think collectively we could be a bit of a force to be reckoned with, couldn't we? If we all did this.
It's the bit where, as the senior nurse, you're not always the manager.
True, but you need to role model. You need to role model in that way, and then it will cascade down. But cascade up too, bottom up.
Oh, it does. But it's just, I feel like my time's running out.
Well, there's so much expertise and wisdom you can share, Annie. With your part of the topic today.
The time's running out to make them do what they need to do, to make the managers do the things they need to do.
Well, I think it's just keeping that momentum, isn't it? And that boundless optimism and relentless drive, just keep going, keep that ambition, definitely. Thank you, thanks so much. I've had a really lovely hour with you all, so thank you, thanks for having me. Has Adam dropped off the call? Do I need to wrap up?
I'm still here.
Oh, you're there. I can see you.
I think that's everything. So it's just thank you very much, Lucy, for a wonderful webinar. I'm just about to send an email out to all the attendees of your presentation pack, and also to highlight the next webinar we've got with Yolanda Fernandez, a life transition coach, who will be talking about the subject of inclusivity. That's it.